The Cabinet of Light is a 2003 Doctor Who novel by Delos Media. It is a noir Dr. Light story, like Blank, and about a detective that gets sent after the Doctor. Now for the twist. We don't know who the Doctor is in this story, and since we're in the murky depth of Doctor Who content, I'm going to summarize the plot because it's very underrated, so if that interests you, there are spoilers from now on. The story is set in 1949 London, and we follow a fixer named Henri Lechasseur, and he's the guy on the cover of the book. He's black, ex-military, and American. He's currently working as a shady but well-intentioned, almost private investigator. He's also an alcoholic. The story opens up with a green fog underneath a pink sky, and a mystery woman with amnesia in pink pajamas stumbles out of a church, and it became a huge, sensational news piece across Europe. You could look at her photograph and forget rationing and devaluation, Pakistan and Palestine, aircraft and fuel crises, China and Germany, the FBI and the MGP, and the silent dust clouds rising over Kazakhstan. She's always looked damaged in the photographs, the authentic face of 1949. She was penned through the middle of the 20th century. All of London knew who she was, even if she didn't. The girl in the pink pajamas, eventually her celebrity waned, and she was gradually forgotten after a few days. Once the novelty had worn off and the police had turned no new leads, she began to vanish from the newspapers, and by then she had come to the attention of the Doctor. But perhaps he already knew. So we cut to Lechasseur's dream of the modern London skyline, and he awoke saying the word Doctor. So now we're at his rental house, and the landlady comes by to tell him that some goons were here the other day looking for him. He blows it off, and then he bikes to a nearby cafe where he's going to go meet a client. She goes by the name Emily Blandish, and she is tall with bleached blonde hair, and he talks back and forth and presents his game. He's like Luther, but more illegal, so she has him look for her husband, the Doctor, and that's all the description she can provide. She tells him to carry a gun and be safe. On his first lead, he goes to this old UK ex-spy contact who knew a certain guy was dangerous back in 1929, and he calls the Doctor a myth, a hobgoblin, and he says that the Doctor invented the patriarchy and brought fire to man. The old man suggests he see Eric Walker at his Inferno Club as a lead. The Inferno Club is for the guys who lost World War II. He goes to the Inferno Club, and there the opening act is Eric Walker putting on a magic show, doing the whole person in a box with knives routine. And then once he's done, the cabaret girls go on. So, Lechasseur catches him alone and tries to get info out of him, but he's racist, so he waits till later and breaks in. He sneaks around and finds a picture of the woman in pink pajamas, along with her address, and he overhears Walker talking to a woman saying that he's found the Doctor. So he runs out and he bikes home, narrowly avoiding being seen, and he gets to his door, and they are goons. One fat, one skinny, both with guns. They kidnap him and put him into a fancy silver ghost car, and they tell him that Mesiter wants to talk. And there's a third goon in the car, and they drive to a huge gated mansion, and they get in, and one guy starts absolutely teeing off.
Wipe that cocky grin off your face, you filthy heathen bastard. You'll not be smiling when the big man sees you. He will cut you in two with your guts hanging from your wretched black body. He is worth 10 times any man and 100 of you. He is the machine man that we will all become, God willing, when men are born from metal wounds. When he was a man, he fought the Hun. Those wicked bastards of Satan cut him apart and left him to die the dogs. But now he has repaired his mortal skin and bone, rebuilt with steel and pumps and electrics that will not wear or fail. He is the steersman of future time. No man commands him, not least you, the lowest thing that walks on two legs.
Mesiter and Abraxas walk in, and they're the other guys on the cover. So Mesiter thinks that he's working for Walken, and then massively threatens him to stay out of her way, and then she has the boys drive him home. The next day, he goes to the pink pajama woman's house. They talk, and he warns her of kidnappers coming for her, and there being a spy outside her house, but he wasn't there when she pointed it out. He told her how to escape her house and take the train nearby to safety if anything were to go wrong. She didn't know anything about the Doctor when he asked, and he rejects her advances and then info dumps about his life, and then she cries because she doesn't have one. And then once she hears the name Emily Blandish, she screams that that was her name, and then the landlady pops in, busts Lechasseur in the jaw, and uses the power of racism and the police to get him to leave, even though she's abusing and exploiting Emily. The next day, looking for leads, he decides to go to the fake Emily's address, the one that she gave him, and he breaks in and she starts shooting, but it's cool once she realizes it's him. He catches her in the lie, and she reveals that her stage name is Miranda Sessions, and she's working for Mesiter. And at that moment, Abraxas comes charging in and guns straight for Miranda. Lechasseur shoots him 5 times with a revolver, changing aggro and losing the gun in progress. But then Miranda picks it up and shoots herself to avoid the torture. Abraxas talks some shit and leaves with a gun. I believe that a truly weak man is one who can't protect his women. So knowing this, only Mesidor can tie him to the crime. He goes home and goes to bed, and he wakes up in the middle of the night being chloroformed by a masked gang, and he wakes up tied to a chair to see walking in a suit. He thanks Henri as the doctor, and he goes on an evil rant about how he's gonna steal the Cabinet of Light and become the doctor. He has hypnotized all the women who work at the club, and then he calls in a gang of witch occultists. They do a seance and use a young woman wearing a TARDIS key as an offering, and they start chanting and the TARDIS begins to materialize, but then an explosion and shooting pops off downstairs and they lose the channel. In the confusion, Henri breaks free and jumps out the window, but he sees that Mesidor and Abraxas are outside because they're the ones who sent in the hit squad. He avoids them like this, and then he runs into the doctor. They take refuge in an abandoned toy store. The doctor starts talking about the history of the building, and then Lechazer pulls a gun and bluffs about shooting the doctor. And then when he asked what to do about Mesidor, he says, either she kills me or I kill her, ultimately by using her own traps. The doctor reveals that Abraxas is a mostly dead cyborg, and when they bump into each other, Henri pickpockets the TARDIS key. He lets the doctor run off solo, and then he goes his own way with the key and the gun. He steals a car from one of the Inferno Club members and then goes to Mesidor's house. He sees the guards from earlier, team drowning, walking in the pool, and they get into a deadly altercation, and the fight scene is crazy. It ends with the goons being shot and Walken dying from his injuries, thinking that Henri was the doctor and that he was going to save him. So they get him through the conservatory, and he hears the doctor 4 below with Mesidor and Amber, so he goes off to find the Cabinet of Light. But when he does, he's caught, and he runs for his life from the hypnotized slaves and Mesidor. And then once he's at the trees near the gate, the whole place disappears and he's left stupefied. So we now cut to Emily, who's basically being drowned by the landlady, and she has a vision of the river, and she decides that enough is enough and takes the route that Lechazer told her to use. But out by the train is Abraxas, and he gets hit by a train during a chase scene, and then he jumps after her. And then a car comes in GTA style, not Gears of War style, the car jump technique in his own way, and he doesn't do much, so he tries to talk him down using the fact that they're both soldiers, but it was a ruse, and he starts unconnecting his organs, and then that gets him whooped. But Emily gangs up with a pipe and they finish him off, and they decide to team up. So I know I brushed over the time sensitivity stuff, and I'll probably cover that when I do the Time Hunter series. If there's even any Time Hunter fans in existence, let me know. So now for the mystery of which doctor it is. So, from the descriptions, the doctor has brown hair, which removes Whitaker, Peterson, Baker, Hartnell, Capaldi, and Pertwee. The doctor is not tall, which would also eliminate Baker and Richard E. Grant. The doctor said, in quote, "Never let it be said I don't carry guns," so that removes Eccleston. The doctor is wearing a black velvet coat with a muffler and has a bad hairline and a clean shave. He's gangly and smokes cigarettes. Their regeneration prior to this one was shot by Mesidor, which weeds out a lot of candidates. 13 could have gone on a mini adventure before she regenerates because she was in the TARDIS alone in the scene prior, meaning that it could be 14. But he's a little bit on the tall side and doesn't have a bad hairline, but everything else fits pretty well. The book came out in 2004, meaning we had no regeneration 8 yet, so she could have shot either of them, making this doctor potentially Paul McGann, Rowan Atkinson, or a future doctor. But that's less fun.